guest wears many hats. He's a former member of Congress. He's the former governor of the great state of Pennsylvania. He was the nation's first Secretary of Homeland Security. Important for our purposes today, along with Senator Joe Lieberman. He's the co-chair of the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense. Here's the breaking news, though. Recently revealed to me, he is my Carpatho-Rusyn blood brother. This is Tom Ridge. Hey, Governor, welcome back.
Michael, great to be with you. And in spite of the Kindred connection, I love the fact that you are, quote, refreshingly independent. In this day and age, it's nice to have somebody to bring that perspective to issues that seem to galvanize one side or the other. So happy to join you.
You are nice to say that. So listen, indulge me for just a moment. I am all caught up in a genealogy, in a roots search, and recently learned definitively that my heritage is the Austria-Hungary Empire, Galicia, a particular village in modern day southern Poland, Swerzowa Ruska. And as I was working with some folks who are far more knowledgeable than I am about this, they said to me with great pride, you know that Tom Ridge and John Kasich are from a similar lineage. Are you caught up in any of this?
I am caught up on this issue at about a 30,000 foot level, but if you really want to get into it deep, you ought to talk to my wife, who's into it very deep and probably can relate to the very specific identification of where you were vis-a-vis where my roots are in that general region. Much more in the Czechoslovakia region than Poland, but as you know, at one point in time was one big mass, but there's a really unique sector of Europe where we find our descendants immigrated from.
Well, I love that when I told you this by email, you said to me, I always knew we were kindred spirits.
Yep. Well, maybe it's that this refreshingly independent mindset that we bring to our view on government, on service, and on policy. I mean, I will tell you this, Michael, as we get more and more ideological and less patient, and when compromise over the years has become a dirty word, and people are no longer reaching across the aisle to find common ground and then use the common ground on a foundation, becomes more and more disturbing to me, because it just takes our government to an era where people are more interested in getting reelected than they are to solving problems. A perfect example is down at the border. For 35 years, we've been waiting for Republicans and Democrats under both administrations to deal with this pretty complex problem, but there's ways you can deal with it. But we've got people down there with photo ops and retweeting, and we're revisiting the issue of the border. Security is one of the 5 or 6 critical elements, but nobody wants to come up with a comprehensive solution, because politically, it probably isn't convenient. Politically, it's a little difficult, but it could be done if you had men and women of goodwill on both sides of the aisle to say, this is a problem. It's the 21st century. It's damn time we built a 21st century immigration policy, period. Sorry to get on my soapbox.
Not at all. Amen to all of that. Listen, the purpose of today's visit is this bipartisan commission on biodefense, and you and I have spoken about it. I've also spoken to Senator Lieberman about it. I applaud your efforts at co-chairing this commission. The wake-up call should be for the country to take a look at COVID and see how unaware and unprepared we were, and now apply it to biodefense. Make that argument.
Well, listen, for the past probably 10 or 15 years, the United States has been on the edges pre-COVID of understanding and appreciating the disease is now global. Transportation is global, we recognize. Finance is global, trade is global. Newsflash, disease is now global. Now, remember when we had H1N1 under President Obama, he had a response coordinator. Then we had Ebola. Ironically, Ron Klain, who's now President Biden's White House Chief of Staff, he was the Ebola response coordinator. After COVID-19, we had the White House set up almost a response mechanism. It's time now, today, to say it is a permanent challenge. We have real vulnerabilities. We have to address them in a comprehensive way, so we're not responding to public health crisis. We're prepared to meet it. Mother Nature is going to continue to throw contagions at us forevermore. She's smarter than we are, more adroit than we are, more patient than we are. But not every contagion should ever again in the United States turn into a pandemic. Period.
Governor, I think because of the momentous events of 9/11, many of us forget the anthrax events of 2001. What happened and what did that lead to from your work perspective?
Well, it's an interesting question, Michael, because when we began, and one of the operative words in my relationship with this biodefense panel is Joe Lieberman, and it's bipartisan. Disease has no political target, just Americans writ large. So we started in 2015 looking at the multiple vulnerabilities with regard to biodefense. Now, it could be Mother Nature. It could have been a terrorism, because initially a lot of us thought that the anthrax was in fact part of a terrorist effort, or you got nation states. And to streamline response to your question, looking at that narrow piece of threat, we established something called BioWatch. And it was a labor-intensive system of devices deployed in multiple cities around the country that have proven for the past 15 years to be grossly ineffective. It's out of date. And yet, in spite of pleas by the Biodefense Commission, by people who have used BioWatch, this country, recently an Inspector General report said it doesn't work and we need new technology. Congress continues to fund it. Again, it is one of the elements that we need to prepare for in the area of biodefense. Mother Nature may not throw it at us, but we know for a fact, the intelligence community will tell you, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, all building out permanent biotechnology offensive capability. And we're ill prepared for that, just as we were ill prepared to deal with Mother Nature's capability.
What worries you most?
Well, worries me most is that we fail to learn the lessons of COVID-19. And those of us who've been on this issue for six years, we're not in a position to say, we told you so. But if you look back at those, I think we had 87 recommendations, only 3 were adopted. You would not have eliminated the COVID attack. We've been far better prepared to minimize the lethality. 550,000 Americans more than died in World War I and World War II because we were ill prepared. So instead of looking over our shoulders and into the rearview mirror, Michael, why don't we take the lessons learned? There'll be some additional thoughts that other people are going to have. Take a look at this bipartisan commission report, build on global subject matter experts, and embed a permanent system in the government, both in the White House and in Congress, to lay out an infrastructure to make sure that when Mother Nature rears her adaptability, her flexibility, her ingenuity at us again, it doesn't lead to such horrific consequences, both personal and financial.
So, Governor, what is it that stands in the way of implementation of all of those things that you and Senator Lieberman and Tom Daschle and the others on the commission think are necessary to protect us against a bio threat? Is it money? Is it getting attention? Is it that the R's and the D's see it differently? Like, what stands in our way?
A wonderful question, and I wish I could give you a specific answer. One, it looks like President Biden, unfortunately, because his White House Chief of Staff, as Ron Klain, was dealing with the Ebola response coordinator. Even yesterday in the infrastructure bill, put in $30 billion. I think that's an initial down payment on what we need to do with biodefense. Ultimately, I think it's a matter of White House leadership working in a bipartisan, which is a tough thing to say these days, in a bipartisan way. And if there's a bipartisan will to set priorities, to set funding, and to eliminate kind of the competitive nature of the political world as to who gets what resources through White House leadership, that's the only challenge we have right now. It's there. Subject matter experts have told us how to get there. We know there's money available to do it. It needs to be done.
With Senator Daschle, you authored a piece that I've put in my social media platforms that says nation states such as China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia have invested and continue to invest heavily in advancing biotechnology, much of which is dual use. What does that mean?
Well, it means that under the auspices of trying to do something more and better for usage in their own respective countries to deal with potential public health problems for their citizens, but also you can flip the technology and turn it into an offensive capability for biological warfare. And going back to a previous question, that's precisely one of the reasons that many of us are so beyond displeased, somewhat disgusted with the fact that this BioWatch, which everybody's been relying on since '04, Michael, that's 16 years ago, in the past 5 or 10 years, there's been plenty of criticism to tell Congress, defund it, direct dollars for a new, let DHS and working with others come up with a new platform and get the private sector get on this issue. Look how rapidly, once we focus the private sector on vaccines, we turn that around with that warp speed initiative. It can be done. You ask what we're missing in this? It's a will to set priorities. We know the money's there, but there needs to be a collective bipartisan will to wrap their arms around biological preparedness and get the job done.
Okay, so here's what I'm taking away from the conversation. That the nation had an anthrax scare in 2001, that the nation's first Secretary of Homeland Security, that would be you, Governor Tom Ridge, was tapped along with Senator Joe Lieberman to co-chair this very important bipartisan commission, the Commission on Biodefense. You came up with 87 recommendations to be followed to protect the nation against biowarfare, and only 3 of them have been implemented. How am I doing so far?
So far, so good. Give credit where credit's due. Some have been implemented in part, but you really need the holistic approach. And we're not saying they're the only answers, but it's a great foundation to build a permanent infrastructure. And if you don't even need to be a scientist to take a look at this, how about just a unified budget that the White House can oversee based on priorities? How about a stratified hospital system so that in the event of pandemic, there are certain centers of hospital excellence that can deal with this? How about building out our public health capabilities? Let's include the BioWatch. I mean, they're just fundamental, basic preparedness, infrastructure changes and leadership changes. You know, what we wanted, Michael, early on was for this to be overseen by the vice president. President Obama and President Trump, their team didn't look favorably toward it. Okay, I got it. But how about an assistant national security advisor working with the vice president on this issue? There's ways it can be done, and then in coordination with a bipartisan effort in Congress, which, by the way, has 31 different committees that oversee biodefense. And you wonder why it's scattered over hell's half acre.
I hope it doesn't take something catastrophic to then all of a sudden put us in a catch-up mode.
Well, I think it's happened. I mean, I think it's a good a point of reference that catastrophe has occurred. We were ill prepared for COVID-19, and we're now already seeing mutations just of this virus. And Mother Nature is more wily and more capable than we've ever given credit for. And let's remember ourselves, disease is now global. We're ill prepared to deal with it.
Governor, Secretary Ridge, great to have you back. Thank you so much. Thank you for sounding this alarm yet again.
Always a good pleasure with you, Michael. Best wishes to you.
Put me together with your wife so I can trace our joint lineage.
I'll be happy to look forward to it, cuz.
Hey, I would listen. You'd be good for my family tree. Believe me, we need more men like Tom Ridge.
We'd be happy to have attach ourselves or whatever to you, my friend. Thank you very much. Thanks for raising.
Thanks, Governor.